Thank you very much, President and Habib. It's now my pleasure to introduce the moderator to the plenary panel on building bridges into the next century, Jeff Pulver. Jeff's the Director of Research and Innovation at the Maine Department of Transportation. He's been with the Maine DOT since 2018, working as an assistant engineer and a civil transportation engineer in the Office of Safety and Mobility before moving to his current position. Prior to his work at the Maine DOT, Jeff was a design engineer at Goral Palmer. Jeff has a BS in civil engineering from the University of Maine, where he focused his studies on transportation. He also serves on the Transportation Infrastructure Durability Center's advisory board, and he's been a great partner and collaborator with our TIDC research team. Jeff.
Thank you, Bill. I look forward to your participation in the discussion after the keynote speaker. It is my pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Luisa Paiewonsky. Luisa has served as a Director of Infrastructure Systems and Technology since 2014. She directs the work of engineering, planning, and technology professionals, focusing on infrastructure modernization, automation, and advanced transportation technologies, maritime monitoring and security, military logistics, and innovative research programs. Also, Luisa has most recently served as a special policy advisor to the White House. Her team supports the U.S. DOT, modal agencies, the Department of Defense, State Department of Transportations, and international partners. She previously managed the Volpe Center's work on the Strategic Highway Research Program. Prior to joining the Volpe Center in 2011, Luisa served in executive positions at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. She was appointed as the state's first leader of the newly created MassDOT Highway Division, formed from a merger of the Massachusetts Highway Department and the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority. In this position, she oversaw the work of 3,300 employees, led a multi-agency initiative in highway safety, and launched the nationally recognized $3.3 billion accelerated bridge program. From 2005 to 2009, she served as commissioner of the Massachusetts Highway Department, where she directed the $1 billion annual statewide road and bridge program. Before joining Massachusetts state government, Luisa served for 3 years as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer in the Commonwealth of Dominica, West Indies. She is a past president and current advisory board member of the Boston chapter of the Women's Transportation Seminar, WTS, and is a member of the advisory board for the University of Massachusetts Lowell Center for Women and Work. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science and Spanish from Mount Holyoke College and a master's degree in city planning from Boston University. I'd like to welcome Luisa to the podium to tell us more about her role and leadership at Volpe. Luisa?
Way down on the mic here. Thank you, Jeff. Great job pronouncing my admittedly unusual last name. A lot of vowels. Thank you very much for having me here today. It has been a long journey to get here. I first reached out to Maine DOT, to Joyce Taylor back in 2019. She introduced me to Dale, and we made grand plans for a meeting of the Volpe Center and Maine DOT leaderships for March 17th. The problem is it was March 17th, 2020, and I don't need to tell you why that meeting got called off. But we stayed in touch, and we provided speakers for the Rail Infrastructure Conference. Dale and the Research Advisory Committee came to the Volpe Center in 2022. And we've built and strengthened our connection between Volpe Center and Maine DOT, culminating in today's visit. We've also stayed in touch with our friends and colleagues at the University of Maine. So it's a great pleasure to be here today. And I want to thank both of these key partners, Maine for giving us overpass signs in Massachusetts. When I was the highway administrator at Mass DOT, I was visiting my sister in Whitefield, and I noticed that Maine DOT had installed signs on overpasses with street names. And I came back and I told our chief engineer, we have to do what Maine's doing. That is a great idea for people to locate themselves when their car is disabled or there's a crash. It brings emergency response that much faster. So if you're ever driving in Massachusetts, you will see street names and town names on overpasses. And remember that Maine was the inspiration for that. And University of Maine, Jeff mentioned the Accelerated Bridge Program that resulted from the tragic collapse of a bridge in Minneapolis. Then Governor Deval Patrick and the Massachusetts legislature put together a package of $3 billion plus for us to spend on bridges. And we realized with that kind of dollar amount, we needed to move quickly. We needed to be innovative, and we started looking around the country for innovative solutions. We borrowed the modular bridge construction from Utah DOT using SPMT. And then our newly hired structural engineer who led the program said, you need to look no further than Maine because they've got something very cool called Bridge in a Backpack. And we were very proud to be the second state in the nation, after, of course, Maine, to use the Bridge in a Backpack technology. And it was such a big deal that our Governor Patrick, came out to see the technology, see for himself what it was all about. So we really appreciate the partnership and inspiration we draw from our neighbors in Maine. I'm going to talk for a little bit about the U.S. Department of Transportation Volpe Center. Can we- clickers, right? Whoops, thank you. Should I point it to? Thank you. The Volpe Center is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in Kendall Square. It's also known as the most innovative square mile in the country. Take that, Silicon Valley, but it is loaded with technology companies, Microsoft, Google, many others, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology companies developing groundbreaking research, life-saving medications, and vaccines. Next slide, please. This is our new facility. We were purchased, we occupied until last year, we occupied a 14-acre campus right at the foot of the Longfellow Bridge. And a very innovative deal with MIT. They purchased our entire campus. They reserved 4 acres for us. They built us a brand new 300,000 square foot facility, much better than the 50-year-old concrete box we were occupying, brand new labs, new conference space, much better working environment for our employees. MIT will eventually redevelop the remaining 10 acres for academic facilities. This is what it looks like. This is our boss, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, taking a tour of the facility last October when we officially opened our doors. And let me just pause right here and warmly invite all of you to come visit the new Volpe Center. It's a really fantastic facility. We'll be proud to show it off and talk about ways that we could explore partnerships with the organizations you represent. These are some of the new labs that we have. They're actually pre-existing labs that we moved into brand new facilities. The Quiet Lab, we conduct a lot of noise analysis for our sponsors. And this is a perfectly quiet lab. We also have a human factors lab with a locomotive, a 737 cockpit, and a vehicle simulator so that we can study and conduct experiments on the interactions between humans and technology with a particular focus on automation. This is the next gen lab at the bottom where we track planes in the air. We also have a similar facility in my group where we track maritime vessels. How many of you have FlightAware on your phones? Yeah, FlightAware is based on a technology that was invented at the Volpe Center. We're very proud. We do a lot of work for the FAA, and we developed this technology that eventually grew into the ability to track planes in the air and provide all sorts of data about them in flight. Obviously useful to FAA, but useful to everybody who has a smartphone and people flying in from other destinations. So these are just some of our labs. We also have a vehicle cybersecurity lab, a radar lab, and as you can see, a maritime situational awareness lab. Organizationally, we are DOT employees. We're all proud federal public servants. We fall under the office of the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg. We have served over, I think, 16 secretaries of transportation since our founding in 1970. Our organization location was formerly a NASA lab in Kendall Square. They transmitted it to the US government for $1 with the proviso that we find our own path. We are not an appropriated agency. We don't get $1 from Congress at the beginning of the fiscal year. We're a fee-for-service organization. And so we have to justify our existence by performing work for our sponsors at the federal, state, local, and international level. That's how we operate. We have about 700 federal staff on site and scattered around the country. I have employees in Minneapolis, Oakland, Washington, DC, Florida, Texas, and the like. A little over half of our employees are, though, Cambridge-based and located in Kendall Square. We also have access to over 350 contractors on site and off site to supplement the work of our 10 research labs. And here's what we do. We sort of act, if I may say, as a in-house consulting firm for the US DOT. We provide expertise across all modes of transportation, from maritime to aviation, rail, transit, highway, pedestrian, bicycle. And we have expertise in all of these areas. And we support DOT and other sponsors in solving complex problems. We have rapid response capability because we have, in many cases, pre-existing funding agreements with our partners so that they can tell us, we've got something coming up, can you help us? We can get going very quickly to help them resolve their issues. We perform inherently governmental work. I mentioned the word consultant, and I know the director of the Volpe Center winces when I use that because we're always at great pains to say, we're not contractors, we're not consultants, we're government employees. Where we differ from contractors and consultants are in some key areas. One is we perform inherently governmental work so that public service is our North Star. We do not charge a profit for our work, and no, I'm not casting aspersions on consulting firms who charge a profit. That's how they stay in business. I'm just saying at Volpe, we do not do it. And consulting firms tend to solve very specific problems with very specific answers. We tend to solve very complex problems with ill-defined input sometimes so that they can bring us in to help sort through what the issues are and identify an array of potential solutions. So if you want to design a bridge, call a consultant, call a contractor when you're ready to get it built. We tend to get brought in, for example, FAA needing better technology to track planes through the air. Federal Highway Administration asking, how do we protect critical infrastructure? MARAD asking, how do we provide better safety and security on our campus at the U.S. Merchant and Marine Academy? That's where we tend to be called in as federal partners to help sort through those issues. An organization with longstanding partnerships. We can also provide when there are changing turnovers in leadership or key personnel, we can say, nope, you've tried this before 10 years ago, didn't work. We suggest you try something else. So that's a value we provide. We also, when we take insights, for example, on the flight-aware technology, we have applied that to the maritime environment and now to the St. Lawrence Seaway. So we don't reinvent the wheel. We take our insights and apply them to the next problem. Capabilities are multiple. We have, as I mentioned, we have engineers, planners, budget analysts, environmental protection specialists, coders, software developers, wide array of professions. We specialize in safety and security. That's physical security, cybersecurity, helping provide resilience from natural, man-made, and cyber threats. We have data scientists on staff. We have an entire division's worth of economists who help provide benefit cost analysis for transportation investments. Engineering is the most commonly represented profession at the Volpe Center. About a third of our staff are engineers. Over half of my staff within the Volpe Center are engineers. We provide environmental analysis. We have expertise in an entire technical center focused on that. Human factors, safety management systems, impartial investigations when there is a derailment of a train. For example, the tragic derailment in Montana a few years back. Volpe engineers are often called in to support FRA in conducting the investigation. We do that on the transit side. So we get at root cause analysis and help NTSB and other partners figure out what happened, why, how do we prevent it from happening again. These are just some examples of the kind of work we do at Volpe. I'll go through them quickly. Safety management systems, that work has been primarily applied to FAA for air safety, but we've also applied those same concepts to FMCSA, motor carrier safety, for truck and bus safety. We do a substantial amount of work for the Federal Transit Administration, which is overseeing Boston's MBTA, SEPTA in Philadelphia, Chicago. We help them provide engineering and analytical support to make those systems operate more safely. This is one example of work we've done. This came out of my group, studying the effectiveness and safety of PCAM, a technology that uses sensors to detect the movement of pedestrians near moving vehicles. It has the potential to dramatically reduce the number of pedestrian fatalities. So you can see why we get excited about our work. Like you, it has real world impact. It isn't just a theoretical benefit. Automation and advanced technology. We have two primary divisions: the Advanced Vehicle Technology Division that tests the efficacy and safety of the new applications and new technologies that are coming out seemingly every day. But we work with the Turner Fairbank Highway Research Center under Federal Highway Administration, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We have partners across the government. We do a lot of testing at the Aberdeen Test Facility in Maryland and other locations throughout the country. And this is one recent study that we've done to assess what are the conditions that might make automated buses less than safe. And these are two conditions that get picked up by the research, by the engineering, by the evaluation. Vehicle in motion when the passenger door is open. That seems quite obvious, but it isn't obvious to the designers of these automated buses. So we're flagging these issues, make sure it cannot move until the passenger doors are closed, and also make sure that you're parking close enough to the curb to enable people to embark and disembark. As technology advances very rapidly, we want to make sure that the fundamentals of transportation safety are applied. More on that in a minute. We also work on unmanned aerial systems, supersonic flight. We'll talk about that in just a second. Alternative transportations, active transportation, and human systems integration. Infrastructure modernization is something that we're very proud of. We support the Army and Navy. We tend to do a lot of work outside of DOT for organizations and agencies that are not transportation experts. The Army is not here to move people safely. They are here to provide national defense, but they have to move people and equipment around quite a bit. They have rail cars and tracks, and we advise them on the procurement of new equipment, track condition, maintenance, and we're very proud to support the Department of Defense in that area by providing transportation expertise. We also, when it comes to resiliency, I mentioned that we focus on cyber, man-made, and natural threats to the resiliency of the transportation system. Also the resiliency of GPS. It's so pervasive that we rely on it every day that we sometimes take it for granted, but we are working within the US government to contemplate what if it got knocked out? What happens then? And we're looking at some technologies that could serve as a substitute, even on a temporary basis, in case we didn't have access the GPS. Cybersecurity engineering, again, as with everything that Volpe touches, it has to be based in transportation. We cannot do any work that doesn't have a transportation nexus. So when what we talk about the cybersecurity work that we perform, it has to do with things like fleets. New York City Transit is procuring new buses, and we help advise them on how to keep them cyber secure, because buses rolling off the line these days are not just mechanical. They have many systems that could be hacked into, and we advise them on how to prevent that from happening. There's a huge expansion under the bipartisan infrastructure law of electric vehicles, which means they need charging stations, which means they need to be kept cyber secure. So again, we're advising on keeping those secure. We advise the Joint Program Office of the Department of Energy and the Department of Transportation, and we have also advised the Navy on similar issues. Thank you. I think we might have skipped over one. Yeah, the energy and next one. Thank you. I'll be quick on this one. Energy and environment, we have an entire technical center. Volpe is made up of 4 technical centers. I'm the director of one of them. Another one is focused on energy, environment, planning, and policy. They do everything from advise on the NEPA strategy for high-speed rail in California to performing noise analysis for the National Park Service. Due to the fact that there are a number of air tours and helicopter rides over national parks that could potentially disturb visitors and wildlife. So we are advising the National Park Service on the noise implications of it. So we have noise and air specialists on staff. Also for NASA, this is one of our projects supporting NASA in its effort to develop supersonic air travel in a way that lowers that sonic boom that disturbed so many people and resulted in a prohibition of these flights over land. We're trying to help them find what they're called low boom technology so that this type of travel can reoccur. We rely on our partnerships, as with everything. You know as well as I do that nothing can happen in transportation without partnerships. As a fee-for-service organization, we rely on funding and non-funding partnerships alike. Here are some of our, well, I mentioned that we do about $300 million worth of work every year. About 80% of it comes from the U.S. Department of Transportation agencies, from our colleagues, from our sister agencies within the DOT. They are the most familiar with us. But we have a significant portfolio with the Department of Defense performing work across all of its branches, from modernizing the air traffic control systems to, as I mentioned, modernizing their rail fleet. We do work for NASA, USDA, Department of the Interior, a lot of work in the cybersecurity realm for the Department of Homeland Security as well. We really treasure these partnerships because they give us new perspectives to inform our work. And this is the one that I oversee. Given my 22 years at Mass DOT, I could not stay away from working with state government partners. We have developed a portfolio. I've added Maine DOT, given the relationship that we've built with Maine DOT over the last 5 years. I've had the opportunity to interact with Joyce Taylor and Dale and Jeff, and really hoping to continue to work together in partnership. We have done some work for North Carolina DOT, helping them develop a school to work pipeline for students in historically Black colleges and universities. Delaware DOT, helping them develop strategies to prevent human trafficking and transport of illegal hazardous cargo. We've helped Maryland Department of Transportation develop a strategic plan for TSMO, or Transportation Systems Management and Operations. Arizona DOT, we took a look nationally and compared their policies for the placement of interstate median barriers with those of other states. That was really important. It became a political issue in Arizona, and we came in as the outside neutral party of experts to help them compare how they were doing. They were doing just fine, just as a side note. MassDOT, RIDOT, and New Mexico DOT are all using Volpe to create peer exchanges to assess and certify their research programs. So we love working with state DOTs. It helps inform our work, gets us a better understanding, a more granular understanding of the state of the practice and how practitioners see the work of the federal government. Oh, what did I do? We also have university partners. Very happy to interact for the last 5 years with the University of Maine, although this is my first in-person visit here. Very glad to be here. MIT, we've done some work in collaboration around automation. And UMass Amherst, we've done some work on traffic operations and safety. I was asked to talk a little bit about my experience working as a senior policy advisor at the White House Infrastructure Implementation Office. I will say that the focus of that office was on getting the benefits of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest such authorization in US history. My previous favorite was the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. I don't know if other highway people are around here, but that was a groundbreaking, earth-shattering, revolutionary piece of legislation that really changed the way our country travels. The bipartisan infrastructure law dwarfs the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. $1.3 trillion, more than half of it going into transportation infrastructure, all modes, all over the place, all 56 states and territories. If you go to bill.gov, you will see it on a map. It's really remarkable. They define infrastructure beyond transportation, and it does go beyond transportation. Clean water infrastructure, many parts of the country do not have access to clean water infrastructure. Climate resilience and clean energy, regardless of what you think of the term climate change, it is absolutely here. We are seeing heat, intense storms, the severity and frequency of storms is increasing, floods, fires, landslides, some of which interact with one another as fires, for example, take out vegetation. That creates more landslides. All of them have the potential for extreme disruption to the transportation system. The bipartisan infrastructure law, or EJA, as some of you refer to it, helps address these threats. It also has funding for access to high-speed internet, and it has other policy layers of equity, climate resilience, and access to jobs. So it was a fantastic experience. I was able to have a 7-month detail to the White House. A lot of focus on project delivery. One of the results was the Project Delivery Center of Excellence, which is now housed at the Volpe Center, responding to then Transportation Czar Mitch Landrieu's mantra: on time, on task, and on budget. And if you work in project delivery, you know how important those are. So in doing our work, looking ahead, we have seen a number of themes that we expect to be working on, and we expect you all will too. One is as automation advances, maybe not as quickly as we all thought it was going to be. I remember thinking when my daughter was young that by the time she was licensed, she'd be in an automated vehicle. She's 21 and she's not in an automated vehicle. But looking at the safety of these systems is really critical. There have been some highly publicized crash fatalities involving automated vehicles. And in order to get people confident in their use, we need to certify their safety. Resilience, as I've mentioned, is a major theme of the bipartisan infrastructure law and anyone working in transportation. There are many inputs that make transportation infrastructure vulnerable to threats, man-made or natural. Freight logistics, as we saw during the pandemic, really critical. I don't know how many people thought about freight and logistics on a regular basis before COVID hit us, but now it's part of many people's consciousness. It never left our thinking in transportation, and continuing to have a robust a pandemic and disruption-proof supply chain is really critical for the function of our national, regional, state, and global economies. Sustainable and equitable transportation. I won't dwell on the climate impacts to it, but I will note that climate impacts can be very unequal. And people who don't have access to backup plans or backup infrastructure sometimes suffer more than everyone else. So there is a big focus of this administration on equitable transportation investments. Transportation finance, the bipartisan infrastructure law provided a huge amount of federal resources into transportation. But at the state and local level, there is still a struggle related to the fact that the traditional sources of revenue for transportation are diminishing, in part for good reason, improved fuel efficiency, more of a mix of climate-friendly vehicles, but still a real challenge if you're working in transportation at the state or local level. Bipartisan infrastructure law will not last forever. So there's been a lot of thinking about what comes next. How do we fund this very expensive profession we have? Infrastructure is not cheap. Restoring passenger confidence in transit in particular, but other transportation systems as we're moving past the most critical part of the pandemic. You cannot, I can assure you by my 5-hour drive yesterday, the traffic in the Boston area and elsewhere in major metropolitan areas in the country is back, congestion's back. You can't really address it unless you have a solid, safe, and reliable transit system. So restoring confidence in the transit system is a critical one. And the role of the transportation workforce, new skills, new people, replacing people who are retiring. I know I'm running out of time, so I will wrap up and just say some of the issues that we've noticed in our work with state DOTs. And I won't presume to speak for state DOTs, but here are some of the things we're noticing. Transitioning from just delivering infrastructure, which will always be a critical role for state DOTs, but also providing mobility as a service. And that is going to be a major focus, continuing focus of state departments of transportation in the near and distant future. Incorporating these cool new technologies into state transportation systems. We in New England have older infrastructure, and there will be a challenge in incorporating brand new technologies into older infrastructure. Adapting organizationally to these rapid changes, it's not easy. There are people involved. They're used to doing things in a certain way. So understanding how to manage people through periods of major and sometimes unpredictable change is a challenge for state DOTs and really for all of us in the transportation business. Managing the advances in computing and sensing technology and deciding which ones may be useful to us. There are so many out there, and that's something that we do at Volpe is help some of our partners sort through the array of technologies and opportunities and find out which one worked for them, which works in the public interest given limited budgets. And then variability. Some of these new technologies don't work so well in low traffic volume rural areas, and they work much better in high congestion, high traffic volume areas. So what might work in Portland may not work quite as well in northern Maine. And that's something that states with significant variability between urban and rural areas will grapple with. Same in Massachusetts. So looking ahead, the need to sort through the expanding array of available technologies is going to be a continuing challenge. The variability will continue to be a challenge. There will be a need for new partnerships. Those of us in the infrastructure business are used to working anything. We work at what's below the tires typically, but now we're working with vehicles, and vehicles are interacting with infrastructure. So that's going to be requiring a need for new partnerships and workforce transitions where you need people with artificial intelligence skills, data analytics, beyond the traditional engineering planning and budgetary skills that we typically and will continue to need in our workforce. So I will wrap up there. Thank you very much. I really appreciated the opportunity to work with you. And please come to visit us at Volpe, and we would love to explore new partnerships with you. Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. I cannot leave without acknowledging you, Maine, Dr. Jogger, Jim Bryce, Aaron Shank, Amanda Collimore, Jenna O'Barron, Amy and Carter, students here, and from Maine DOT, Joyce Taylor, Jeff Pulver, and Dale Peabody. Thank you for working with me in preparation for today, and thank you for your warm welcome.